The Imago Dei, about 60 years before the birth of Christ, his people, the Jews, threw themselves into another civil war. At issue was which brother of the Hasmonean dynasty would inherit the family's throne and rule over the independent state of a Jewish state from Jerusalem. The brothers each had allies. Aristobulus got the support of the Sadducees. The Pharisees sided with Hyrcanus, and Hyrcanus also purchased mercenaries, like Hessian mercenaries, all right? Purchased mercenaries from the Nabatean Empire, which sent 50,000 soldiers to assist him. But none of it mattered, because Rome was in the neighborhood. Pompey, who was making a tour of conquest around the east, was in Damascus when the general was asked by the brothers to come settle the matter. Now, without getting deeper into the weeds, the end of the matter is that you should never ask Rome for help unless you want Rome to be in charge. After a siege of Jerusalem that saw 12,000 Jewish soldiers lose their lives, the Roman general entered the temple. And the historian Josephus tells us that there is nothing that affected the nation so much in the calamities they were then under as that their holy place, which had hitherto been seen by none, should be laid open for strangers. For Pompey and those who were about him went into the temple itself, whither it is not lawful for them to enter but the high priest, and saw that what was reposited therein, the candlestick with its lamps, and the table, and the pouring vessels, and the censers, all made entirely of gold, as also a great quantity of spices heaped together, with 2,000 talents of sacred money. Pompey marched through the holy place with its treasures. But Josephus assures us that he touched nothing. And across the room was one more curtain, the most holy place, the room that only the high priest enters, and only once a year, to worship the Lord on behalf of the people. Pompey drew back the veil and saw nothing. No Ark of the Covenant. That had been exiled to Babylon over 5 centuries ago. No Shekinah glory of the Lord either. But there was something. It was nothing. No image of this God whom the Jews worshipped. No statue, no idol, no image. Nothing. The second commandment of the law of Moses reads, "You shall not make for yourselves a carved image." This is Exodus 20, verse 4. "You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or to serve them." It had taken 800 years, but the Jews had finally learned this lesson in exile. It might have been the only lesson they learned in exile, but you take your wins where you can get them, right? The mystery that Pompey witnessed when he drew back the curtain points to a greater mystery, the truth which gives humanity its meaning. There is only one image of the true God on this earth, and it's you and me. Our church's statement of faith affirms that we believe God created humankind immutably, that means unchangeably, as male and female to reflect and bear his image. As such, human beings of every ethnicity, age, ability, as well as the preborn, deserve dignity, protection, honor, respect, and Christian love. Because of Adam and Eve's free choice to sin, God's image in all humankind has become distorted, and relationship with God has become disrupted. We have agreed as a church and as a movement that this is a reasonable conclusion about what the Bible says about humanity. But it sparks questions. And question number one is this: what does it mean to be made in the image of God? What does it mean to be made in the image of God? And to understand that, we're going to triangulate by learning what the Bible says about images in general. How does the Bible define images? We already saw one. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything. And an image, a likeness, is a representation of that thing. An image represents something. It's nothing more fancy than that. An image of something helps you imagine it. An image of someone helps you imagine them. And the image itself is harmless. Statues of Baal can't do anything more than the picture of your grandma can. But while you and I would never imagine grandma could be challenged or channeled through that picture of her at the lake, the ancients did believe this. They believed that those images did, in fact, mean something. Those images were the gods' representatives in the physical world. A carved image provided the mouths with which those gods ate the good sacrificed to them, the eyes with which they saw who was sacrificing to them. That's why those carved images were equipped with eyes and ears and mouths and set up in temples where their worshipers came to perform their rites. As such, they were actually more than those objects themselves. To the people who had made them, who sold them, honored them, worshiped them, the image equaled more than the sum of its parts, and people idolized them. That's why the Lord repeats in Leviticus 26:1. We'll play Pepper for a few minutes, just follow along. Leviticus 26, you shall not make idols for yourselves, or erect an image or pillar, and you shall not set up a figured stone in your land to bow down to it, for I am the Lord your God. And there's this warning in Psalm 135. The idols of the nations are silver and gold, the work of human hands. They have mouths but do not speak. They have eyes but do not see. They have ears but do not hear, nor is there any breath in their mouths. And Romans 1 reflects, for although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking. Thus, like their imaginations were twisted, and their foolish hearts became darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. The Lord Jehovah is different. The true God doesn't have eyes or ears or a mouth. He doesn't need those things. Remember what Jesus told the Samaritan woman, that God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. God is spirit. The human mind is expected to move beyond the material, beyond the strongest and the fastest. No strong young bulls, no high-flying eagles, no majestic beast with a human head. God doesn't need a body with which to see and hear. That's why there was a veil in the temple to begin with. The presence of God, separated by two curtains, from the courtyard out there where they performed the sacrifice. The Lord Jehovah isn't like those other gods. He didn't need an altar right in front of him so he could see what was being sacrificed and who was doing the sacrificing. In fact, the Lord Jehovah doesn't need a temple at all. So that's why Pompey would always have been disappointed when he pulled back the curtain, for there was no image of God except. Let's look at that. We're going to head to Genesis chapter 1. Like I said, page 1, maybe page 2. Depends on how large your print is. Genesis chapter 1, verse 24. We're going to read all the way to 31. And then we're going to look at two other places in Genesis that talk about the image of God being placed on us. Genesis 1:24. We're on the sixth day of creation, and God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kinds." And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God made man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. Blessed them, and he said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heaven, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And God said, "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heaven, to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Among everything else, the one thing I want to capture today is in verse 27. So God created man in his image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. There is an image of God on this earth. And it's you and me. This is reaffirmed in Genesis 5. I'm going to look at 5, verses 1 and 2. This is the book of the generations of Adam. When God created man, he created him in the likeness of God. Male and female he created them, and he blessed them and named them man when they were created. And if you look down, you notice that there's all these begats after that. When it's time to recount the generations of man, the genealogy of the human family, the story makes sure to go back to the originator, the founding father. Get it? Humanity is not an accident. Humanity is not a mutation on the evolutionary tree. Humanity is special, made in the image of God. Men and women both, distinct among all creation. When we act like animals, we are acting against our true nature, not according to it. And this idea comes up one more time, and it's a big one. Genesis chapter 9. Flip over a couple of pages. We're going after the flood now. 6, 7, and 8 recount the flood and Noah's rescue through it. Now we come to Genesis 9, verse 1 through 7. I want you to see this. Verse 1, and God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. We've heard that before, right? The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. So something has changed. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for every lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man, from his fellow man, I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. One thing has changed, and one thing is not. And the very big thing that is not changed is that God blesses humanity, says, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. And you are special, for you are made in my image. Let's remember everything that happened between Genesis 1 and Genesis 9. God created man and woman in his image. Then man and woman disobeyed. They sinned. They fell. And that fall was passed down through the generations. Brother killed brother. Jealousy had entered the world, and with it murder, and then vengeance was hot on its heels. So much that by the time we get to chapter 6, the Lord decides he's had enough of the violence, and he seeks to cleanse the earth. A great flood. God would begin again with Noah and his family. God repeats his commission here to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Go make babies and accept lordship over the animals. But be very clear about one thing, that shedding the blood of another person is still not permitted. Why? For God made man in his own image. Humanity was made in God's image before the fall. And humanity is made in God's image after the fall. Humanity was made in God's image when it was very good, and humanity is still made in God's image even after that goodness is tarnished. Humanity is special. We are God's image bearers, and sin cannot take that away from us. Read the awesome in this passage. Sin can't take that away from us. It's still here. We're still special. Is that good? So what is exactly this image? Is it how we look? Does God look like us? How about creativity, or our ability to invent things or create things that seem to imitate God's abilities to create? What about our capacity to love, or our ability to imagine beyond ourselves in time and space? I would say that none of these answer the question of what does it mean to be made in the image of God, mainly because the Bible doesn't say anything about this. The Bible does not explain the image of God. It doesn't explain how it works. It just says we are, and that's it. To be made in the image of God is to be human. It's simply to be human. The great mystery is answered very simply. How is each person made in the image of God? Answer: we just are. We just are. I would especially say that none of these attributes, none of these characteristics matter one bit toward our image bearing, for the simple reason that a person who doesn't have these things matters just as much to God as the person who does. No one is more special to God because they can do something, and no one is less special to God because they can't. Specialness to God is not based on capacity. Specialness to God is not based on ability. Specialness to God is not based on usefulness, as we might define it. Specialness to God is not based on whether someone wants you or not. Again, this is an argument from silence. The Bible never says that humans are made in the image of God because they can blank. And the Bible never says that a person loses the image of God because they blank. And people keep being born. And every one of those people is unique, more unique than snowflakes. More than 8 billion alive now, and more than 100 billion or so since the beginning of time. So, I guess God isn't done pressing out images of himself yet. To be made in the image of God is to be human. It's simply to be human. How is each person God's image bearer? We just are. You and I, and everyone who has ever lived is an image, is a likeness of God. An image, remember, an image represents something. An image of something helps you imagine it. An image of someone helps you imagine them. So, you and I reflect. We help other people imagine God, making us special, unique among all creation. Adam is just as special to God as Eve, who is just as special to God as Cain, who is just as special to God as Abel, who is just as special to God as Abraham, who is just as special to God as Sarah, who is just as special to God as Rachel, who is just as special to God as Leah, who is just as special to God as Moses, who is just as special to God as Korah the rebel, who is just as special to God as Jephthah, who is just as special to God as his daughter, who is just as special to God as David, who is just as special to God as Saul, who is just as special to God as Elijah, who is just as special to God as Ahab, who is just as special to God as Elisha, who is just as special to God as King Zedekiah, who is just as special to God as King Nebuchadnezzar, who is just as special to God as the blind man on the road to Jericho, who is just as special to God as the Samaritan woman, who is just as special to God as the disciples who didn't understand, who is just as special to God as the sinner, who is just as special to God as the saint, who is just as special to God as the slave, who is just as special to God as the freeborn, who is just as special to God as the Jew, who is just as special to God as the Gentile, who is just as special to God as the American, who is just as special to God as the Frenchman, who is just as special to God as the South African, who is just as special to God as the half-naked Pacific Islander, who is just as special to God as the Prime Minister of England, who is just as special to God as the Belizean, who is just as special to God as the Democrat, who is just as special to God as the Republican, who is just as special to God as the Communist, who is just as special to God as the Anarchist, who is just as special to God as the protester, who is just as special to God as the officer, who is just as special to God as the immigrant, who is just as special to God as the thief in prison, who is just as special to God as the person they robbed, who is just as special to God as the atheist, who is just as special to God as the priest, who is just as special to God as the Buddhist monk, who is just as special to God as the eighth daughter of the Muslim, who is just as special to God as the man in the nursing home, who is just as special to God as the infant in NICU, who is just as special to God as the boy throwing firecrackers, who is just as special to God as the man sweeping them up, who is just as special to God as the stockbroker, who is just as special to God as the South Dakota farmer, who is just as special to God as the Iowa housewife, who is just as special to God as the unmarried man, who is just as special to God as the married woman, who is just as special to God as their divorced friend, who is just as special to God as the baby with Downs, who is just as special to God as the unwed mother, who is just as special to God as the wanted unborn child, who is just as special to God as the unwanted unborn child, who is just as special to God as the person who wanted them, and is just as special to God as the person who didn't. Was that excessive enough? Did I miss anyone? Does it make sense? And it gets even better. Because there has been one person on earth who has not been tainted by sin, and he gave up his throne and his life so you and I could be rescued. So the image of God in us could be restored, the tarnish getting rubbed off of all of us so that God's glory can shine. Turn to Colossians chapter 1, because I want you to see this too. This image, this image comes up again. Colossians chapter 1. We're in the New Testament. And I want you to know where this is. We're going to start in 1:15. We'll read through 20. Up through now, Colossians 1 has been introducing Jesus Christ, and now Paul gets a little ridiculous. He says, He is the image of the invisible God. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He gives them integrity. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn of the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. Without Jesus' work, the stain of sin would obscure God's image in us forever. It would condemn us to suffer its penalty forever. But if you're looking for that pure image of God, the untarnished image of God, look no further than Jesus. There's two basic ways to apply this message about the image of God. How you think about yourself and how you think about others. How you think of yourself and how you think of others. Are you ready to see yourself as no worse and no better than anyone else in all of history, because you are just as special to God, his image bearer? And are you ready to see every person as equally special to God as yourself? No more and no less, and to treat them with the dignity that that image affords. Bent, perhaps, but not broken. every one of us is stamped with the image of God. A likeness not to be worshipped, but to represent, to dignify, and to receive dignity. Amen. Father, thank you that you weren't satisfied to create mere beasts, but to bear those who represent you here on earth. And through Jesus Christ, we are being assigned, commissioned to representation. Jesus is our head. As the one who is the true, unmistakable, untainted image of God. May we represent him well. May we represent that image well. And Lord, help us to see it in everyone we will meet today. Ask this in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.